Alhamdulillah. Okay. Welcome everybody with our session tonight about effective classroom management for virtual classrooms specifically. This is Ms. Walaa, Ezzat, a teacher trainer. I'm a graduate of the Faculty of Arts English Department of English Language and Literature from Cairo University. I'm also a TEFL holder from Notting Hill College of Teachers. I'm a certified teacher trainer, alhamdulillah, from Arizona State University. I recently had my SAT trainer certificate from ITTI Online Middle East, and I've been teaching English as a foreign language for more than 15 years. Currently, my current position is a humanities supervisor in an international school in Saudi Arabia. So let's start with the objectives that we're going to learn today through our session. First of all, we're going to know the definition and the components and how to prepare for a virtual classroom. We're going to also have an introduction to classroom management and some of the strategies that you can apply when you are going online to a virtual session. Those strategies would include how to prepare your students for the session, your role as an online teacher, also what do we mean by virtual office hours, how to manage time in online sessions, communication tools, their types, and the best use of each one of them. Also, how to manage your content and resources when it comes to online teaching, assessment management, again online, everything is here is for virtual classrooms specifically, and finally, what do we mean by netiquette and how can we apply it? So let's start by the definition of virtual classroom. How can you define a virtual classroom? I'm following your answers in the chat box. Do you know, or do you have any experience with a virtual classroom? Did you teach virtually before? Yes, Miss Asma, it's online teaching. Thank you. Online classroom, yes. So it's, as the definition says, one of the definitions of a virtual classroom is that it's a replica or like something that is similar to a physical classroom with a teacher and a student interacting together, but it's not happening on a physical environment in a classroom. You're doing it through platforms. Thank you, Ms. Amani. You're doing it through a digital platform. And you need to make sure that you are achieving the learning outcomes. So those five highlighted words are the main aspects of having a virtual classroom. It has to be a replica of physical classes, so it can't be online if you're doing it in a class or a room. It has to have an interaction between the teachers and students, using the online, of course, for connection, and finally achieving the learning outcomes. You're not just using the communication tools for fun. There has to be learning objectives, okay? Now, what are, from this definition that we have, or that we just said, what are the components of a virtual classroom? What do you think? Oh, thank you, Ms. Asma, for reminding me to record. Ms. Minna, would you please start recording the session? I can't, it is recorded.
Already it's recorded.
Yes, it's recorded, I can see. Thank you. So the components of virtual classroom. Yes, Ms. Minna. So the components of a virtual classroom is, number one, you have to have a display visual information, like the one that we have here.
Can I add something, please?
Yes, okay.
I think the first component in the virtual classroom is the material prepared previously online.
Yes,
That the instructor will try to use it to communicate with his students. So he has to get ready by preparing suitable material.
Yes, excellent. So
like
thank you so much, Moonlight.
Like interactive elements.
Yes, we'll come to the aspects or the components of a virtual classroom in details in a minute. But now, like for the general components, just as you said, and even Ms. Hasna in the chat, she said the ebooks and PowerPoint. Yes, it's correct. So for visual information, you need a way to display that. It can be a whiteboard or an application like Zoom that would allow you to share, like what we're doing now. You will also need a participation interaction. So this is why, for example, YouTube videos would not be considered visual classroom media unless the chat is on, so that you can communicate with the learners to make sure that they are on track, that they understand what you're saying, and so on. So participants interactions tool are very important for a virtual classroom. Finally, you need communication between the instructor and the students, and even between the students themselves, among themselves. So as we just said here again, like in details, teachers and learners, and we need a digital platform. We also need visual and audio tools to share the information with students, two-way communication tools, and finally soft materials, like just like what Ms. Hasna said, you need ebooks, because when online, you can't use the regular notebooks and books that the students usually have in school. You need to make sure that you have a PDF copy of all the material that you need. Okay, now when it comes to visual classroom preparations, they are actually divided into two parts, planning and designing, okay? Let's go one by one. Now, bear in mind, when you are planning your material for a virtual session, that not all students are familiar with the technology. Some of them will be really overwhelmed with the idea of having a virtual classroom or attending an online session. So this is why you need to take it slowly at the beginning. Sometimes you would need even to divide your session to have between the presentation and the content of the lesson itself, and you're assisting the students and helping them to focus on the material that you're delivering. Whatever you're doing in order to be able to deliver a correct information to the students. Also, number two, you will need to modify the goals and the objectives to match the online teaching experience, because as we just said, yes, you deliver the same information, but not on the same way. So this is why you need to revise, you as a teacher, revise the goals and objectives of the curriculum that you are explaining in order to match the technology of teaching it online. Try to develop a learning community for yourself as a teacher and for the students themselves. How would I develop a learning community? Or do you have any suggestions of developing our learning community as teachers, or examples?
Can I say?
Yes, please, Ms. Amani.
Okay, at first we can introduce our virtual classroom and make orientation sessions to inform our learners about the program itself we are going to use, and the learning outcomes we are going to achieve
Yes,
at first.
thank you so much.
So it's important to make an orientation session. Okay. After
Yes,
that, we have to prepare well, as you said, in design and in lesson planning.
yes, excellent.
Okay, activities and the games and interaction inside the classroom should be always exist as a means of engagement of learners. Okay. Hello. Can you hear me? Hello.
Teach in a physical classroom might need to be modified or be even summarized or shortened to suit a virtual classroom. So prepare your content in detail so that you move step by step Do not move to the next session unless you're sure that your students are really following what you said in the current session. Divide the content into manageable modules, because if you like in a physical school, if the students didn't understand what you said during the session, they might meet you at the break time or after school to ask you a question. Online or virtual classroom, this might be difficult for them. So this is why it's highly recommended that you divide your curriculum into manageable, like short enough or sufficient so that you can deliver it easily, and you give it enough chance for your students to ask you if they have any question. Also, you need to prepare all the materials that you're going to need, whether hardware material or software materials. You do not start a virtual session with a broken laptop, for example, or a mic that is not working. This is when it comes to the hardware. Okay, or if you need speakers, if you prefer to be wearing headphones, you have to get those ready for the virtual classroom. And also for software, we mean the books, the material that you're going to deliver. Decide on a communication tool, meaning what? There are lots and lots, hundreds of apps nowadays that can be used for virtual learning. But which one do you choose? This is your choice, unless the school, for example, provides you with a specific app that you have to use. Okay, so if you have the choice, you have to like go through them all, pick the one that suits you the best, and then stick to this one. Decide which one. This to avoid the confusion among students. Do not start with a certain application and then say that it's not suitable for me, or it doesn't achieve all the purposes that I need and I need to change it. It would highly confuse the students. Pick one and stick to it from the beginning of the school year till the end of the year. Finally, as usual, you know, we as teachers can never enter a classroom without a plan B. Always be ready for an internet connection to be interrupted, or a PDF that wouldn't work, or a slide that you wouldn't be able to share with the students. So always have a plan B for every step that you're going to have in your session. Then comes the next step. First, now you're prepared, you know what you're going to do. Let's start designing the material. As you know, most of those virtual classrooms are taking place through the PowerPoint presentations, just like the one that we have now in this presentation. How can I design my presentation to be suitable for a virtual classroom? Number one, it needs to be simple. Do not make the screen crowded with lots of images and pictures, because students might be following you from a mobile phone and the screen is really small. So you need to make sure that it's simple, it's easy to see and follow the instructions that you're saying or whatever you're explaining. And also it needs to be consistent, meaning that it's explaining only one idea. Do not crowd everything on the same presentation, and also that the same lesson is discussing the same point or the same idea. It also needs to be organized and sequenced. If you have to put things in order, so you have to make sure that the presentation is matching the order of the lesson. Okay, this is why you need to revise your presentation more than once before delivering it to students. And finally, it needs to be accessible for the students. Do not just make a presentation and then when you send it to the students, you'll have problem opening the link, or it doesn't match for us, or some of the effects are not working for us, and so on. Make sure that the presentation that you use or any material that you're going to use through your session is accessible for the students as well. Okay, so far so good. Are you all following? Am I going fast? Do I need to slow down?
No, it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay? Yes,
You are doing good.
Thank you so much. So now here comes the part of the virtual classroom strategies. Okay, now give me your ideas about a classroom management. What do we mean by classroom management, or what should it include? What does classroom management include?
Can I say?
Yes, please.
Organization of time, organization
Yes.
of teamwork together, also organization of the sequence of presentation, time management, rules,
Very good.
and finally making a rapport with our students, our
With the
learners.
students. Yes,
Uh,
thank you so much, Miss Amani. I
not at
also
all.
see participants here saying, let me see the chat box. Yes, group work. Yes, Ms. Rosa, excellent. Group work is important in classroom management. How to divide your students through activities. How to keep them engaged. Thank you, Ms. Rabab. Putting the rules. Thank you, Ms. Hasna. This is a very important point that we're going to discuss. Yes. Thank you. Okay, so actually all what you said now is included in classroom management. Classroom management means that you get your materials ready, you know what instructions you're going to give during the session, the policies and the procedures, meaning the classroom rules, because believe it or not, even virtual classrooms have policies and rules. Then also you need to manage time, behavior of the students, and the layout, how you're going to present your sessions. Just a second, let me delete this annotation. Someone annotated. Now, number one is preparing the learners. How do I prepare my students before the session to be ready for my session? Number one, as we just said, you need to start slow. Take it slowly, one step at a time. Do not just start immediately into the curriculum and without having a warm-up or an icebreaker activity at the beginning of the school year. Thank you, Ms. Said. Yes, achieving the objectives in the allocated time. The essence of classroom management. Thank you. You need to familiarize your students with the website that you're going to use. Haven't we just said that you need to practice using the website first? After you practice it with yourself, you need to practice it with your students as well. So you may need to take the first 2 days, for example, just trying all the options that you have on this website with your students. Like here on Zoom, I might make them try the annotation because maybe later I will need them to answer a worksheet on the presentation that I'm sharing, or using the voice, or trying in lower grades if you allow them to open their cameras and so on. Introducing supplementary tools, meaning what? Like here in Zoom, in the live session now, I'm explaining the lesson, right? But how about if I need to give you a worksheet? How do I do it in a virtual classroom? You need to find a supplementary tool, because for example, you know that here in Zoom, it's not possible to share files. I know that there is an icon that's saying share files in the chat box, but I tried it before, it doesn't work. I don't know why. So you need to find a supplementary tool with which you can submit the worksheets and also take the homework from your students. It can be WhatsApp, as what Ms. Hasna said. It can be also Google Classroom. It can be Google Forms or the Drives and so on. Create demos. I think we have talked about this point previously in details. You need to create a demo for the website that you're using with your students. Also allow them to practice the new technology that you're using so that you get very familiar with them. Provide a feedback. Now that you've made the demo with your students and they tried the new website that you're using, give them an immediate feedback on their initial contributions. Meaning what? That now I can see that someone has annotated on the screen. I think his name was Ahmed. So I might say that, Ahmed, please next time do not annotate, or I would immediately stop the annotation option for the students. Or I see that someone is struggling with using the chat box, so I can give her a feedback, or him a feedback on how to properly use the chat box. So after you do the orientation sessions, the demo sessions, to get them familiar with the website, give them feedbacks to make sure that they were 100% capable of using it without any further obstacles in the future. Also, introduce the same things that you used to do in a face-to-face classroom. It's always preferable for students to start with something familiar. So if you are teaching the same students that you were teaching the previous year, start with the same routine. Do not change everything at once. Enough for them that they have changed the way or the means of learning. Okay, so you might start with a similar routine or a fixed routine that you used to do in your physical classrooms to get them more comfortable with meeting you on a virtual classroom. Make your expectations of the students very clear. So for example, we're using the Zoom presentation only for me to deliver the lesson. I don't want anyone to participate right now. Keep your participations till the end of the session, and so on. So make your expectations from the students very clear from the beginning. So students do not get confused of what exactly do you want them to do. As we said before, classroom rules in a physical environment would not match the ones in a virtual classroom. So you need to modify your rules and procedures depending on the requirements of your new virtual classroom. Do not just take copy paste because it wouldn't work. Now here comes your part as an instructor. What should you do in a virtual classroom? Number one, plan and plan and plan. You need to plan a lot for a virtual classroom. People might think that online teaching is easier than physical classroom, but actually it's much more difficult. It takes time and it's really time consuming, because you need to be well prepared. As we said, the presentation needs to be well designed, explicit, simple for the students to read. So it takes lots of time to plan, and also to make sure that you're delivering your content well, in a good way, in an excellent way for the students. You need to implement the modified goals and objectives, as we said before, okay? Look at the objectives of your lessons or of your curriculum. When you are now setting the curriculum map, we're still at the beginning of the school year. Like here in Saudi Arabia, we just started our school year. Students are expected to be back, inshallah, next week. So this week, we as teachers are trying to modify the curriculum map as much as possible to fit the new learning environment as virtual classrooms. Make sure that you deliver sufficient course materials. Make sure that you send the students every single worksheet or piece of information or website link that they might need, okay? The more material you give the students, the more it would be easier for you to explain in a virtual classroom. Make sure, this is the point that Ms. Amani said at the beginning, keep your communication with the students or the learners through virtual classroom, keep it good. Achieve good communication. Now we have a whole part for communication in a minute, in a while, so we'll come to this in details later. You as a teacher as well, when it comes to virtual classroom, you will need to be counseling and motivating your students all the time. Counseling for the problems that they might need. I can't use this platform, this link doesn't work, the presentation you sent is not working for me, there's something I do not understand in the lesson, and so on. Motivation, you need to keep them motivated, because it's not like the physical school. They're going to meet their friends and have a break and have a chat. Virtual classroom is actually independent learning. So you need to keep them motivated to see you, to come to the next session and attend. Also, your role as a teacher of providing grading and feedback, do not think that this will stop in online teaching. You will have to do this as well in an online teaching. You keep the grading and feedback, but we can do it in a smarter and easier way. We'll discuss this part in details in the slide that talks about assessment, okay? Then you might have an online question and answer session. If your weekly plan can question and answer, and you tell this to your students that they're coming to class, the online virtual classroom, I mean, and then you allocate only one session for question and answer.
Okay, Ms. Walaa,
Assignment management again. And
if you please.
yes.
Yes, the session is about to end after 5 minutes. Please come back again on the same link.
Yes, okay, I see. So please, everyone, if you lost the, of course, if you'd like to, we're hoping to see you. Do not go away. Okay, assignment management, again, we'll deal with this in detail in the assessment part. And finally, make sure that you're archiving every information and recording everything that you send to the students, because you might need it later. As we said, you're not available at the school so that they can ask you whenever they can. You need to have a reference or a backup of every worksheet that you give them. And of course, I mean a software backup, not the physical pen and paper. يعني زي ما بيقول بالعربي خلاص راحت عليهم يعني. Okay, keep your work all soft copy. Now here comes the part about virtual office hours. Now, in a physical classroom, didn't we go to school in a certain timing? You have to be at school from 7 a.m. till 3 or till 2 p.m. Now, think of the same way in a virtual classroom. Electronic communication but instead of having the regular office hours, you're doing it online. I would recommend that you have a working station at home, even if it's a very small table that you put at the corner of your room. But you know, your family members, your wife, your sisters, or your husband know that this is your working space. Okay, in this space you keep all the cables that you need, the electronic devices that you might need in your sessions, the books, the worksheets, and so on. Make a specific place for you, so that you feel that this is the working place, this is working time. Okay, so who is meant to be or to participate in virtual office hours? Of course, the teacher and the students. What should they do during office hours? The same things that they used to do during the regular office hours, to be available for students and for parents if they have any questions, to share the resources and the feedback. Okay, now when is the timing of the virtual office hours? Now, actually here you have two options. If your school allocated a certain specific time for you to be present, you have, of course, to follow the rules, okay? Or if you're giving a private session, or or your school allowed you to just coordinate the timing with your students as long as you're there and the material is being delivered, it's up to you. So it can be fixed hours or can be flexible depending on the requirement of the school that you're working or the organization that you're working for. Finally, where does a virtual office hours happen? Of course, it can be on Zoom, it can be on WhatsApp, because you know some parents argue that Zoom is very difficult for early ages, like grade 1. They can't use the Zoom themselves. So you might just send messages to WhatsApp for the parents, or it can be also phone calls in which you receive questions from parents and so on. Why is it important to have virtual office hours at specific times, or to have them even weekly? Number one, it would make you a chance to meet with the students live, okay, for questions, to help them if they need help in a specific area of the curriculum that you're explaining. Number two, it would be very useful for you to give public questions or to answer questions publicly for all the students at the same time. You would not have to repeat the information or the instructions individually for all students. No, I'm holding a meeting, everyone should be there. And it can also be parents, by the way. You might need to do a meeting with the parents to tell them your classroom rules. Okay, so it would give you a chance to say the information once and for all. Okay, it would also minimize parents' questions, because they know that I'm going to meet the teacher at this certain time, so they would stop contacting you on private every now and then to ask you a question. They would just wait for the meeting time to ask you all the questions that they have. You can use those questions that you receive privately and make a list of frequently asked questions so that you can explain it or answer them on this virtual office hours. You need to make sure that the course materials are available for everyone with no limitations, meaning you make sure that you send them to all the materials to all the students, so that when students tell you that I didn't take this worksheet or I was absent in this lesson, you make sure that the materials are sent to all of them to all of the students. Okay, now we start time management, but I prefer that we break the room because it's only 1 minute left. So what do you think, Ms. Amani? Shall we stop
yes,
and come back?
yes, we will stop right now and we'll be back on the same link. I sent the link via chat.
Yes, join the room
Okay,
again, all of
okay.
you.
See you.
See you.